Hey everybody, today I wanted to start a new video series on a question I get quite a bit. Is insert profession here good in speed clears? I do get that question a lot. People say, is my thief good in speed clears? Is my Ellie good in speed clears? What am I supposed to do? The standard answer that you get a lot when you ask this question on forums or on Reddit is yes, all professions are viable in dungeon speed clears except maybe necromancer. Well, I'm not really satisfied with that answer, and I wanted to go into a bit more depth. I know some people who are asking this question play professions like thief or ranger, and they have friends who tell them that warrior is just better and they should give up their thief and play warrior, and that warrior is the best DPS, and yada yada yada. Well, the goal of this series is to go through each profession, explain what the profession does that contributes to the success of the team in dungeon speed clears. This will give you an idea of what other people will expect of you when you join groups, and that's the best bet. If people are looking for you to do a certain thing and expecting it, and you aren't able to execute properly, that's the number one thing that's going to make them look negatively upon you. So it's good to know what people's expectations of you are, even in somewhat disorganized groups. So the first profession I wanted to touch on is the one I know best, and that's warrior. So we're going to go through warrior, and I will discuss the things that people will expect warriors to be able to do in dungeon runs. So the warrior, let's start with that. The warrior seems to be the most obvious, straightforward profession, but it really isn't. Warrior is not the top DPS profession, and really it's not even in the top half of the professions in terms of personal DPS. But when it comes to buffing everyone else's offensive capabilities, warriors are the best in the game. The standard meta team comp, 1 guardian, 1 thief, double Ellie. If you add a warrior as your 5th member of that party, you increase the team's overall DPS by 23%. And the reason for that is Banner of Discipline and Banner of Strength. Banner of Discipline and Banner of Strength are really just that good. Replacing any other character in the standard party comp with a second warrior will be a DPS loss overall. The first warrior can bring both banners and is a net gain for the party. This is why in almost every tournament team that we saw in their comp, they almost always ran one single warrior. And the reason for that is that first warrior will buff your whole team by 23% DPS. And it's really hard. In fact, it's impossible to find another profession who can single-handedly gain the party that much. So what do people expect a warrior to do in their groups? And the first one is banners. I touched on the benefits of the banners, but it's important to know that there's a difference between the warrior that just randomly drops their banners when they're available and an experienced player. A good warrior is expected to know the duration of boss fights and the time between boss fights in a dungeon path. Sometimes it's better to save your banner on an easy boss so that it's available for the harder boss. I think the best example of that is in Sorrow's Embrace Path 1. That very first golem boss, there's almost no need to drop the banner because he dies so fast, and there's a very good chance if your team has good enough speed making it to the hallway that you'll get to the second boss, Knock, who's quite a bit harder, and won't have your banners ready. So in a lot of cases, the best thing you can do is save your banners, don't even bother using them at the golem, and have them up for Knock. An even better thing you can do is know that situation beforehand, drop the banners before you even get to the golem, so that the banners are expiring right as the golem is dying, and the banners disappear right as the golem dies. Then you have about 24 seconds between when the banner disappears and when the cooldown's up, and by then you should be just getting to Knock and the banner should be coming off cooldown. That way you get the banner at both bosses. And really that comes down to knowing the particular path and being able to manage your cooldowns expertly. And that is really the hallmark of being a good warrior to being a great warrior in Guild Wars 2. And is making sure that the best thing you can be doing, which is dropping banners, you're doing as much as you possibly can and in the right times. Alright, so the next thing is to be conscious of is your blast finishers. you don't have a great deal of blast finishers. Mainly, you're going to often have your banners, and you're going to have call to arms. So what do you do with your blast finishers? When you are dropping your banners, are you consciously aiming for the Elementalist fire field? Are you blasting stealth with call to arms when the thief puts down a smoke screen or a black powder? When the Ellie puts down a lightning field, are you blasting it with call to arms for swiftness? You really do want to get the most out of your blast finishers. You don't have a lot of them, but really, one thing that organized groups do, even on casual runs, like my guild will do and other speed clearing guilds, is they're very, very hyper conscious of their blast finishers. They know what each blast finisher does, and they know what the different fields look like. And you'll notice the best warriors on all these teams are super conscious of always making sure that they use their blast finishers in the correct spot. And getting the most out of, especially call to arms, is the best, because you're only going to have the banners for blasting fire fields at the start of a fight. But call to arms is sort of like your go-to utility management thing, and you got to know when to use it, when not to use it. And now that call to arms puts you in combat and slows you down, you have to be super conscious of where you are and your surroundings. So it's a much trickier skill to use, and there's a bit more nuance to it. And you can definitely tell a good warrior by how he deals with his call to arms. The third thing for a warrior is swiftness. Thanks to Signet of Rage giving you tremendous swiftness uptime and the natural mobility provided by Whirlwind Attack and Rush, warriors have awesome mobility outside of combat. Their mobility is actually so good that in disorganized groups, the warriors generally get so far ahead of the rest of their team that they draw the aggro, and then the aggro leashes, and it all comes back down on the slow pokes that are coming up behind that are just on slower professions, and you'll often see teams getting killed by the back aggro left in the wake of the warrior. And it's really to the credit of a good player if he can make sure that he maximizes his charge swiftness to make sure his team gets as much swiftness as possible. When there's lightning fields, you want to make sure you're blasting with call to arms and then giving charge. You want to make sure your team has permanent swiftness, and you want to make sure you're doing your part and not using charge exclusively selfishly. You want to recognize that as the warrior, you have the privilege of being the fastest person in the party, and part of that privilege comes with the responsibility to make sure that the people that are left behind when you're going forward aren't being put in hopeless situations. So you want to make sure you're taking every opportunity to keep the slower members of your party going as quickly as possible. The next thing I want to mention is War Banner, and this, and Battle Standard, I guess you should say. It comes up in Fractals a lot. When you're meleeing Archdiviner and Mossman and the Dredge Power Suit, it's quite common for players to go down, and it's really inevitable, really, even in good groups. A warrior in these instances is really expected to have War Banner and to know when to use it. A good warrior is expected to know when he should do a normal res, when he should just kill something to get the people to rally, and when he should drop the War Banner. These are split-second decisions, and it really comes down to battlefield awareness and experience in all the different situations, and knowing in a split-second snap of a finger whether to pull the trigger on the battle standard, since there's such a long cooldown. If you get it wrong, it's just a huge waste, but if you get it right, it's a game-saving move, and it makes you look really good. So it really comes down to experience. You never want to drop it to res a guy who you could have just rezzed anyway, or a guy who was just about to rally off of some trash mobs. So using the battle standard is really especially using it properly is the mark of someone who's not only experienced on Warrior, but experienced in the game in general, so they know exactly when the right time to use it is. It's a learnable skill, and I think that people, even if they don't get a chance to use Fractals a lot, and they're just do normal dungeons, should probably bring Battle Standard every now and then, just to get practice with it for timing and to build up that situational awareness that will help you manage your Battle Standard. The next thing I want to mention is knowing when to respec your build. Normally I'll be running the meta build, something like this, but there are times when you should change. It's up to the warrior to know when his team comp isn't good at might stacking and when it's time to switch to a phalanx strength build. You have to know enough about what the different professions do and what they bring to the table and be able to gauge the people in the party. Maybe you have an elementalist in your party, but he's running staff and he's not that good at might stacking, and the other people in the party aren't so good at using blast finishers with his fire fields, and the team just is sucking at might, and you're looking around and most of the fight everyone's at like 6 to 9 might. At that point, you should really know that you need to respec to phalanx strength, and it's up to you to make that call, and know when to retrait, because you don't want to ever retrait to phalanx strength when you don't need it, because then you're just giving away tons of DPS for no real gain. But when you do need it, it's going to be an overall boost for your team, and it's really up to you to figure out those situations and understanding what's going to benefit you and what's not going to benefit you. Lastly, one thing I want to mention about the warrior, it is highly beneficial to be self-sufficient and to know how self-sufficient warriors are. Warriors are definitely the most self-sufficient class. Soloing bosses on a warrior is generally easier than it is to solo on any other class. Not every boss can be soloed, obviously, but warriors are so survivable and they have so many built-in evasions and they're so good at self-buffing that it's often going to be the case that the warrior is going to be the last man standing when something bad happens to the group. And if you're the warrior and you're the last man standing and the boss is at like 10 or 15% health, it's really highly valuable for you to have the skills of soloing to be able to finish that boss. And that really comes down to practice and knowing the boss's mechanics and knowing what he can do and being able to use your whirlwind attack to the best effect and being able to finish the boss. Not only does it make you look really good to be the last guy standing and actually finish the boss, it's just beneficial to the team. No one likes to wipe and have to start over. So it's a really good deal if you're able to maximize what the warrior brings to the table, which is self-sufficiency when that's called upon. And then the last thing, and it kind of goes back with the phalanx strength discussion I want to bring up, is knowing when and to use your different weapons. First, I want to mention when to use strength runes, when to use scholar runes. Obviously, if you're running phalanx strength, you want to switch to strength runes. If you're in the right kind of group, you want to use scholar runes. If you're in a certain kind of group, you want to use strength runes. And it's really up to you to know. Warriors also have a lot of different weapons and a lot of different situations. This is your general mobility set, greatsword, sword, warhorn. You want to make sure that you're switching to this setup when you're outside of combat, running to the next boss. But you also want to be sure that you know when to equip your axe and your mace for combat, or in what bosses is sword offhand better than mace, or in what situations is axe warhorn better to go with. And so it really comes down to knowing the encounters and knowing what's out there. And that goes along with the self-sufficiency, and it also goes along with being able to look at the other people in your party and know what's going to be needed of you. So that's it for Warrior. I'm going to be working on the remaining classes as time goes on, and I'll do another episode with a different class. As always, I'll be happy to answer any questions you guys have in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and have a good day.